Hi, everyone. Welcome to More Than Mortgage. Chad Anderson, Zach Jones, episode number 27. Today, we're going to teach you how to stalk some people in a legal way. It's going to be fun. But first, do us a favor. Like, subscribe, download, hit the bell, follow, comment, DM. Follow us on socials, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. He is at Zach Jones Loans. I am This Chad Is Real. And we got some good stuff today. So last week, we talked about loan estimates and red flags. Now, if you really want to take that episode and parlay it into the most perfect segue we've probably ever had in these 27 episodes, background checking couldn't be more appropriate for today's show. So, Zach, I'm sure you've used this plenty of times. I definitely use it, but anytime that I have a customer who comes to me and says, look, I have this amazing loan estimate or quote or fee sheet from this other company, and they are guaranteeing all these things. Or if I have a tough file, oh, they said it's no problem. They said I'm good to go. They said I could close in 2 weeks. They said I could do this, I could do that. They promise you the world. One of the very first things I do is go and check, what loan officer are you really working with? Have you used this tactic before?
Well, Chad, we live in a digital age, right? And everybody's
Yeah.
looking at everybody's stuff. And so, in I don't know that there's another industry. I'm trying to think through that. I don't know that there's another industry, Chad, that makes the employment history and complaint history, formal complaint history, for any individual licensee as available as the mortgage industry does from one source. You can literally look up a person's name or license number and find out the complaints that have been lodged against them, what states they're licensed in,
Yeah.
and their recorded employment history, which is supposed to include all professional employment going back for even prior to the mortgage industry.
10 years.
Um,
10 years.
is it
Yeah.
10 years? Okay.
But
And
if
a
you
lot
haven't
of
been
us
in
have,
mortgages 10 years, then you still have to report where you've been and what you've done.
right, right. So you can see, even prior to 10 years ago, on shorter terms, and then that just kind of rolls as somebody is in the industry longer. So it's very interesting, and it's one of those things that I use oftentimes when I'm competing, because I want to know, is this a fly by night operation? Is this
Right.
somebody who's, drives Uber as a main deal and they're moonlighting on the weekends,
Yeah.
working in a call center or whatever? And those are very real circumstances that are relatively easy to kind of do a little investigative work, be your own PI, and find out for yourself.
Yeah. So we're going to do that. And you know what? I didn't even plan this. I just thought about it while we're doing it. I'm like, who do we look up? Shoot, let's look me up. All right. I'll share my own.
There you go.
You can research me here. Okay. So we're going to bring this up. Here's the website you go to. We'll put this in the video description or link or comments or something. NMLS, which you can see here, NMLS consumeraccess.org. NMLS consumeraccess.org. You come right in here. If you know my name, you put it in there. If you know my NMLS number, you put that in there. So I'm just going to do that for simplicity, 372289. So you can look me up. It's going to say, hey, I agree to terms and conditions, blah, blah, blah. Let's make sure we're not robots, although maybe in a few years we all will be with AI. And then here we are, Chadwick Mark Anderson, Franklin, Temecula, Modern Mortgage Lending, Inc. We go by Modern Lending, but here we are. So this is my whole profile. We have an MLS ID. I actually need to update this because the phone number's wrong. Phone number's wrong. I don't have a fax number. Sorry. Other names. So I go by Chad Anderson. My legal name is Chadwick Mark Anderson. Prior other names. Nope. Don't have anything there. Prior legal names. This is redundant and redundant again. Regulatory actions. Hey, I haven't violated anything. The NMLS hasn't hit me for, I guess, that they know of, right? The NMLS hasn't hit me for anything here. Um, Employment, authorized to represent, Modern Mortgage Lending. And then right here, you can view myself. Now, it is self reported, but if they
Mhm.
catch you lying, that's a bad thing. So, self reported employment history. So, you hit this drop down. Now, I'm a little bit of a unicorn, and I'll tell you why here in a moment. So we go all the way back to 2003, which I could actually delete some of this stuff by now at this point. But I was a student at the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. I worked in my prior life with broadcasting. So I was at WVUA radio for 4 years while I was in school. Then I became a realtor. You go spend all that money getting a degree to be a realtor. So I become a realtor in Huntsville. Then I get my first mortgage job in October of 2010, Home Loan Center, formerly known as First Residential, SurePoint Lending, mortgage banker, Franklin, moved to Loan Depot, call center, 2011 through 13. Got out of the call center into retail, December of 13 for 10 months, and then back to Loan Depot once they opened retail from 2014 to 2022, and then currently today with Modern Lending since September of 2022. So the reason I say unicorn is because I have literally only worked for 5 mortgage companies in 14 years, and that is unheard of. I worked for the same mortgage company for 10 years, and that's unheard of. Usually, this line here for Stonegate Mortgage, where I was there for 11 months, usually that's more common in the mortgage world, is that somebody's been in the business 15 years. There's 8 mortgage companies represented with an average of 1.5 to 2 years at each one. And then you hop around. So this is my self-employment history. Office locations, are able to tell these right here. Branches, states authorized to conduct business here: Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, Tennessee. You can even view all the details about each one, when that started, license history. You can do all these things. You can really check me out and know what I've been doing in the mortgage world, and then regulatory actions. So this is everything. Like, this is pretty detailed and very in depth. So Zach, this one right here, this section, how easy is this to pick apart when you're doing the background check on someone?
Well, so the most recent use of this for me actually happened yesterday, as
Oh,
I had a very technically inclined VA borrower who owned a home already with a VA loan and was utilizing a subsequent use entitlement, which is a little bit of a technical calculation. You kind of have to know what you're doing. And so I'd engaged this person up front early and did a pre-approval, went through the entitlement process, went through the calculation with him because he's that guy, very technical. The agent last Friday said, "Hey, they're getting hot on a property. Just wanted to let you know I've had no less than a dozen lenders reach out to me on them and say they're pre-approved." I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go. They're shopping. This guy is really shopping." So they go under contract. There's a little bit of correspondence over the weekend, and I'd already spent. When somebody says they're shopping like that, I don't panic because I always do everything the same up front. I spend a lot of time, a lot of technical investment, and answer questions and do all that. So, I wasn't scrambling with this customer doing anything different. And so comes up yesterday, get the phone call, the text, "Hey, I need a quote update, please." And so I, looked up the taxes on this house they're making an offer on. It came in under contract this morning. And he says, I talked to him last night after he got off work, he said, "Hey, I'm going with you. You're the technical guy." But in the meantime, he had sent me a loan estimate that was maybe 0.5% less in rates with no points, complete bait and switch offer. Taxes and insurance incorrect, title stuff was incorrect. So I just pointed those things out to him and I said, "Hey, if you want to take a look at this loan officer's history, I mean, you and I are talking, you value my technical expertise and my investment. Let's go take a look at this guy." And so I directed him to the NMLSconsumeraccess.org. And we looked at it, and the guy had 5 jobs in the last 22 months. So he was he was a 4 or 5 month wonder. And so it wasn't, I didn't even have to say anything when I pointed that out. The guy was like, "Okay, that's the only answer I need." So if the guy was shopping with 10 or 12 lenders, I won at the end of the game. based on service, based on price, based on fees, and based on my reputation, to close loans on time and get the job done. So very important to take a look at that, especially that job history. And because somebody, has had a few jobs doesn't really necessarily mean anything as far as whether or not they're a good loan officer. But you've got to be suspicious in any industry of somebody who's changing their affiliations every, 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 months. And the other kind of we do a lot of peeking behind the curtain here, Chad. The other thing is that if you see somebody who's changing jobs and affiliations every 12 to 14 months, there's a lot of names for them in the business, but I call them a bonus chaser or a check jumper.
Yep.
Because they get a sign-on bonus that they're obligated to maybe a year or 2 years engagement, and then they're looking for another job because they've spent all that money. And they're trying to supplement their income in a way because they're not settled enough to have enough business to just generate income and stay with a great company and make great relationships. Golly, Chad, there's a lot to talk about behind this. That's the other thing that I'm thinking about is somebody who is moving companies all the time never has the ability to establish the depth of relationships that really, really is one of the greatest assets for a loan officer and a company in this industry, because you have to be able to interact with the support staff, the verification staff, the compliance staff, all of those background functions. Critically important to the way that we do our business and do it well. You can get a loan closed, but it might not be a pretty process if you don't know all of the players involved and have these ongoing long-term relationships.
Yeah, my favorite too, and I've said this many times, especially when I've been like a manager or branch manager, area manager, whatever. I kind of bring this up because sometimes you have people who this happens a lot. You get people who kind of think maybe they're all that, and get a little too big for their britches here and
The
there.
divas.
Yeah, and one thing I remind people, this goes honestly for realtors and it goes for loan officers. And if you don't believe me, just look at how many are in each industry. Okay. And how many treat it as almost like a side gig or your hustle money or your summer job or something. Is when you do this, say, hey, look, here's the difference between the kid serving your table at a bar on Friday night and you. And it is a 20-hour class that can be taken online and a 75 on a test. Once that's complete, and assuming the person serving your table hasn't committed a felony, between those two things or three things, you're now equal on paper.
Right.
Now, your experience isn't equal, right? But explain your experience to a consumer when the consumer is looking at the interest rate. That's what you have to overcome. And that's why we tell you as the consumer and people who are watching this video, this is why you do background checks. Here's the unfair part to the background check. The person who served tables a year ago or 6 months ago may be one of the smartest people and the most honest people in the world.
Right.
But again, when you're trying to compare experience, how often do we give that person the opportunity? We want to kind of work with the person who has the most experience, right? Kind of gone through it. They know what they're doing. They're not going to miss something, whether malicious or not. But my point is, you do these things and combine it with the red flag test on the video we did a week ago. Because if you've got the low interest rates, the low fees, or the fees look off, or they're in different buckets, or it's kind of shady, or you can't ever get direct answers, or the loan estimate isn't locked in, or the escrows are off, or all these different things, and it just doesn't seem to line up or mesh, this is a perfect litmus test to go, this seems too good to be true. Let me dig a little deeper on this person that's quoting me and who I'm working with. That's when you go into here and you start going, 5 companies in 22 months, huh? Like at some point, it's not the company, right? Like you can't be at 5 different companies in 22 months and they all 5 suck. Like
Right.
the odds of that are just tremendously low. What's the common denominator in that situation? So that's why I love the background test or, check or whatever you want to call it, but you can't isolate it. My thing is you do have to at least step back and go, okay, combine this with what I'm being quoted and what I'm being told and how I'm being handled as a customer and the respect and the professionalism and the communication and the response time. Like it kind of all comes together. But when you apply that with this background, the background can open so many eyes and give you an idea of what's going on.
Well, we've spent a lot of time kind of talking about that particular loan officer, and I want to circle back a little bit to the inexperienced loan officer. The person who was waiting tables a year ago.
Yeah.
Chad, our days are filled with detective work, basically puzzle solving and troubleshooting, and coming up with creative ways to do this or do that, or find exceptions, or how do we make income work on self-employed borrowers or people who have multiple streams of income. And I just think about how many you can go on to any mortgage originator or ask the originator or ask the underwriter Facebook page, and somebody will put out a simple question. I saw an agent the other day asked a very simple question about termite inspections. Hey, lender friends. And it was one of the most ridiculous arrays of responses from lenders who are supposed to know these things about when a termite inspection is required and when it's not required. And it's so difficult to get straight answers that are substantive. And I know a large part of the problem, Chad, is that people are dependent on what other people say or what they remember from 1986, which no longer applies, instead of looking at guidelines and becoming an expert on the utilization of the rule book. And that's where people get caught with a poor pre-approval, where they really weren't minding their P's and Q's about particular types of income. And suddenly, somebody gets 3 weeks into a contract and appraisals are done and inspections are done, and the realtor's already cashing the check in their mind to pay their mortgage. And they say, well, this was never even a loan to begin with. If somebody had done their work on the front side, they never would have looked at the first house or gone to an open house, because they're not a buyer. So that experience is invaluable. And the industry is not big on support and helping others. And so, a lot of that experience comes in an individual fashion through the school of hard knocks. And so a good professional, experienced, high producing loan officer is worth a lot in the complicated world that we live in.
There's such a great quote that I saw, and I don't want to mess it up. You may know it better than I do. I'm going to say it anyway, and apologies if I butcher it a little, but it's, you're not paying me for the 30 minutes that I spend on your file up front, or the 5 hours that I spend in total across the entire transaction. You're paying for all of the knowledge and experience and hours that took place to get to the point to where I know what I'm doing. That's the whole point of a lot of this. It's not, so many times we start breaking down somebody's compensation or rates or whatever based on hourly pay. You get $3,000. You only worked 5 hours on my file. I'm not paying you $600 an hour. You're not paying $600 an hour. You're paying for all the hours spent learning and going through this and getting to the point to where you don't have to worry about your file once I take it, because it's going to be there and I'm going to give you the best advice I know. We're going to put you in the best spot we can, and we're going to give you the best, roadmap for your house and your investment. That's really, again, what we're doing. So anyway, I hope that helps. I hope, you kind of have your eyes opened on the background check, because I think it's a big deal. And especially if you combine it with some of the other information we provided you last week with the red flags and the loan estimate and so forth. So that'll do it for us. Like, subscribe, download, follow, hit the bell, share, comment, DM, whatever you got. Channels above: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Zach Jones Loans. This chat is real. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And by the way, have a happy Memorial Day weekend. Stay safe when you're traveling and enjoy the first official weekend of summer. And we'll catch you next week. Take care.
Thanks for watching.